Witcher is professional monster slayer. You can say like medieval hitman. The Geralt of the Reeve is actually the most legendary of the Witchers.
He tries not to be a hero. He always tries to stay neutral, and always he's forced to take part of big events.
They call him White Wolf because of his white hair.
His legend, his myth.
The problem they have used to be the demand for their service, which was gradually decreasing. Right now, it turns out that there's a comeback. The Witchers are not human.
They have some superhuman abilities. First of all, they are completely immune to poison, to disease. They are very fast.
They have been taken from their parents as a very small children. They've been given a series of mutation.
They are ageless. They don't age at all. They're some kind of immortal beings.
They have really expert knowledge about all kinds of monsters, so they can fight them effectively. They have different combat styles, different techniques for each of the monsters they meet. They're the master swordsman. Of course, they know the alchemy and some of the magic. They're simple spells called signs they use, but they're very effective. And of course, they can use unique potions, basically lethal for normal human, but for them, they work like aiming their perception. Geralt of the Reeve is not as typical as other Witchers in making choices.
For some people, he's a monster. For other people, he's a savior.
Mostly, the Witchers have clear distinction between good and evil. They can decide, always, of course, upon their advantage, decide upon what's good, what's bad.
Unlike other Witchers, he has human emotions.
He has more moral problems than other Witchers, and that's actually when the storyline is more interesting.
Geralt is kind of flawed Witcher. He's more human than most human beings.
As you know, The Witcher is based on Andrzej Sapkowski's novel, and this is a great source of inspiration for us. This is the place where you're looking for any tips and guides, just to create anything, starting with the environments and the characters. And of course, this is the place where you're looking for this unique atmosphere that Andrzej Sapkowski has created.
We used lots of actual medieval plans of buildings, some paintings and things like that to create something that looks really beautiful but still has its own style. It's not like mixture of random elements. It's not something completely it's not something completely artificial. It's something that we believe could be a real fantasy setting.
This is not the pink, purple kind of World of Warcraft thing. This is completely different style, and we are trying to imitate that. We are trying to move this idea into the 3D game.
We use a licensed engine from BioWare. It's called Aurora Neverwinter Night engine, but we really heavy modified it. I believe it's like 80, maybe 90% of this engine was rewritten completely. First of all, we changed our rendering system. It's no longer OpenGL, now it's completely DirectX 9 with all newest features like bump mapping, environmental mapping, pixel shaders, everything you want in very modern rendering engine.
As I told you before, we are trying to create this really dark kind of world and our environment created to look a bit dark, but at the same time, of course, we have this beautiful sunsets in our game and you can watch really great looking environments. But when you will move on into the city, you will see all the sewers and really dark places where you wouldn't like to, live.
From the very beginning, we wanted to create a real world that looks and feels like a real world.
We spent like 6 months hiring a professional, drawer, painter to create the look of the main hero. He did hundreds of sketches where the look of the hero was constantly changing, and at the end we found out something that really looked like cool, not only taking all the content from the book, but also looking cool inside the game.
We have over 50 monsters inside our game. We can divide our monsters generally we can divide them into 2 groups because they're non-human kind of creatures and human kind of creatures. The characters are connected with the environment. If you walk at night somewhere, at the river or somewhere, I don't know, if you would like to visit swamps, you can be sure that you will meet a lot of creatures there, and you will probably have to fight with them in order to survive.
If time passes, you see, sun going down, you see the weather changing, things like that, you can believe it's a real world. So we have a very complex system of weather and day and night cycle. Not only the environment changes, not only you can see that the light changes, shadows, things like that, but also behavior of all people, enemies, monsters, but also animals change during the day and night cycles. Our game is set in a background described in a series of books by Andrzej Sapkowski.
Andrzej Sapkowski is, I believe, the most popular Polish fantasy writers. He created the story of the Geralt that the game bases upon.
He's extremely popular in Poland, in Russia, in Spain, in Czech Republic. Actually, in all countries he was published so far.
It's not necessary to know this, read these books to play the game, because we're making a game that is self-consistent.
Story in the game is a completely new story. It was written by us, it's not based on books. So the story starts like 5 years after those books ends. At the end of those books, Geralt dies. Actually, he departs from this reality, from this world. So it's so mysterious that people who wrote those books are always arguing if Geralt survived or not. So Andrzej Sapkowski told us he survived, and so we can bring him back. Geralt appears at the beginning of the game, and because we wanted the game to be played by people from other countries, Geralt lost his memory. That's why player playing the role of Geralt will be introduced to the world in the same way as the main character.
We concentrate more on getting to know the world and finding out how the world of Andrzej Sapkowski is created, what rules are used in this world, and what's so exceptional about it.
It's about real problems. So while reading those books, you will find problems that are also in newspapers. Headlines of newspapers are about terrorism, about ecology, about emancipation of women. So all those things you will find in those books. So those books are about modern problem and also about modern people, because you can easily understand their motivations. They don't want to save the world by dropping ring into volcano, or they don't want to destroy the world. They just want to have fun, to gain power, to earn money, to drink. So those things we can easily understand. So they are real. Problems are real. Decisions in the game, in this world, are real.
What's also important, it aims more for the more mature players, because I know maybe too young players might have difficulties in making these choices easier.
It's very real. It's not a good choice and bad choice, but a choice and its consequences. You made a choice and you have to live with it.
Because of the decisions that you make and the fact that the consequences you face are prolonged in time, you need to have a clear indication what decision generated what consequences. And that's where we came up with an idea of creating the flashback system.
After, like, say 5 or 6 hours of the game, you will encounter event in the storyline, and this event is a result of your very choice, like in the beginning of the game. So every time you encounter such event, there is a special flashback cutscene showing you what you did and why this resulted in such event.
All this allows us to make a game that can be played and should be played more than once, because there are at least 3 main lines you can follow, and 3 games you can see, 3 developments of the story.
It's fun to play the game multiple times because of the choices you make, because of the different stories you can find out.
Those choices build up 3 completely different endings. Those different endings are absolutely completely different situations. Some people are alive, other died. We have different friends, different enemies, but actually we always succeed. We always achieve our final goal. We always finish the game. But it's always different price we pay. This is how we try to tell the story. We wanted to give player as much freedom as he wants to change the story, to have a story as he likes in the game.
The Witcher is about to take like 40 to 50 hours to walk throughout the whole game, but that's only through the one path of the game. And since there are multiple paths, you can multiply that.
We wanted to create the game based on those books, and at the beginning we just wanted not to spoil the quality of books and make adaptation that is equally good. And I believe we did it, so I can say the game is one of the most innovative, interesting PC role-playing games published so far. First of all, it's a very deep tactical combat, like it should be in a role-playing game. So we develop our character. We have like 250 different abilities, and we can use those abilities in combat, not only in combat but mostly in combat. There are lots of spells. We have 5 completely different magical powers. We have 6 completely different fighting styles. We can combine those fighting styles with those spells to produce very effective tactics against monsters and also human opponents.
Our game has real-time combat, not turn-based one. We wanted it to be real-time because we want to involve player. We think that this is the only way to do it. Also, it's just far more spectacular.
We want to use the whole potential of the character. We want to use the whole potential of Witcher described in books. And also we wanted to make combat very intense, very dynamic, very interesting. Unlike other PC role-playing games in which combat usually is quite static, maybe not boring, but not so intense and emotional.
This combat is based on point-and-click system, and you can basically use mouse and it will be enough.
You have to react, you have to click on opponents at the right moment, at the end of your animation, to perform next attack in a sequence. With every click you are satisfied that you achieve something because there is another animation, there is another very cool looking strike, because we have like 250 different animations of attack.
So you can cut throats, you can cut heads off, stab your opponents on the ground. You can do various brutal finishing moves.
Witchers also are trained alchemists. They can gather some monster parts, use those parts to create potions.
Also, we have over 50 various potions which are used during combat or before combat.
Some of those potions enable us to see in darkness, other potions speed us up. There are also resistance potions, regeneration potions, lots of very specialized potions working only on Witchers, because they are poisons for normal humans. Witchers also can use some kind of magic. It's called Witcher's signs. Those signs are basically spells, very simple but very effective in combat. For example, the most famous of signs is Sign of Art. It's kind of telekinetical push. You don't do any harm to your opponents with this kind of spell, but they are stunned, sometimes they are knocked down with this spell for a while, then they are defenseless. So you can stun your opponent and then finish him with single strike. It's the way Witchers use spells. They combine spells with sword fight. What about equipment in the game? Of course, it's a role-playing game, so there is plenty of equipment, like different weapons and stuff like that. First of all, they're using medallion. It's mark of their trade. This is also magical medallion. It detects monsters, it detects magic, and in the game we will use it like to detect monsters and also to protect from spells. Also very important is a silver sword and steel sword. Witchers always carry 2 swords, one against monsters made from silver and another one made from a special steel against humans. Actually, it's not against humans, but it's against some kind of monsters that are immune to silver. We extensively use motion capture in the game, mostly because we wanted to have a very unique fighting style of Geralt.
To create this kind of style is a really complex process because it involves a lot of people, the stunt group, the designing team, and the animation team, and all that guys work together just to create the unique fighting style you can use.
So we hired professional stuntmen who trained for a few months to create a mixture of different fighting styles together with some superhuman moves of the Witchers to create a very unusual fighting style of the main hero. It has like 300 different animations, motion capture animations just for Geralt. In game we have totally around 1,000 of all motion capture animations. Rest of them are fist fight animations, there are combat animations for other human opponents. We wanted to have a combat system which is very involving. You have to observe what's happening, you have to be concentrated on your character and also on opponents. From the very beginning of creation of the combat, there was one limitation. It should be really easy to control because we wanted to create a game that will be accessible for casual gamers. So you can finish the game with just a mouse. Of course, for more advanced players, they can use keyboard, but for casual gamers or people who don't want to, struggle with interface and controls, they can really enjoy the whole game with just a mouse. I believe that the game has at least 3 very strong elements, like outstanding elements that make the game being something unusual, unique and interesting among other PC role-playing games. First of all is the main character.
The hero, the unique, charismatic personality that you can play.
He has heart, he hates, he has passions, he also loves.
Not the generic one, typical for an RPG game.
This created a very unusual character. Superhero, but on the other hand, very human being.
The second one, interesting, intriguing storyline.
I describe it in a series of books. It's not typical fantasy. It's
facing more of modern problems than actually the ones that you've met in fantasy so far.
We wanted to give player as much freedom as he wants to change the story, to have a story as he likes in the game.
Branching in many places and leading you towards the completely 3 different endings, so you definitely want to play the game multiple times.
And last thing, we have outstanding combat system.
Never seen before in an RPG game, but still basing on the rules you already know, it's just faster.
Combines both tactical role-playing elements, but together with very spectacular dynamic combat system like in action games.
2007 is going to be the year of The Witcher.